Okay, lovelies, today we're talking about depression in the biology of Kundalini. We're on page 105 if you've been following along in the book. And this is a little bit of a chunk. I'm really appreciative of this part of Jana's writing. So again, you can follow along online for free at lulu.com. But here we go. She begins, as Kundalini moves through the miasms, or repressed, damaged, latent areas in the brain, we might feel the emotions connected with each developmental arrest. The miasms were created in stress. In stress, they are transmuted. For every up, there is a down. So it is understandable that depression might result after the overstimulation of the brain's pleasure centers and increase in endorphins during the bliss of Kundalini. Depression could also result as the left brain loses its normal adaptive function during the first few years of a major cycle. Loss of left brain prefrontal lobe function could lead to paranoia, frustration, self-pity, or other negative emotions. So when you see those emotions predominant in someone that you love, maybe a partner, maybe yourself, it's good to know that they could be experiencing this Kundalini influx. They could have had this influx, and now there is this metamorphosis going on in the brain, and the life force is going through these dormant areas and flushing out old stuff. And to be able to know that rather than just judge them as depressed or say you need help or I can't do this because you're down all the time, or even to feel that way about yourself, to feel like, what is wrong with me? Why can't I get out of this? This perspective offers so much in the way of compassion and understanding that can really support humanity on our journey forward. So she continues, there tends to be a psychological letdown when the tide turns down in the valley as the influx of spirit abates. Because remember, we get the high, we get the awakening, we get the boom, Kundalini shoots up, awakens us, and then there is the integration time, right? And consciousness plunges again deeply into matter. This feels like a loss of grace after the heady heights of the influx. But the valleys are just as important as the mountaintops in the transformational process. Once Kundalini storm is kindled, eventually the body runs out of neurotransmitters and their precursors, and so the body-mind falls into depression. So we get all this stuff activated, but we're utilizing stuff that we didn't have built before. We kind of like blew out the system that we had, and now your body's like, holy cow, if we're going to do that again, we're going to need to build a bunch of stuff. So you maxed out, so it makes sense that you're going to ground out so the body can recapitulate and figure out what it needs to be at that height, okay? And I'll tell you, this happens again and again at every awakening stage. You can feel like the most awake person that you know, and then you can yourself have another life epiphany, and you'll continue to expand what the possibilities are for yourself through greater vision. You know, and the more we practice this cycle of integration of the highs and the lows, we will be afforded again greater vision. It's like learning to play a game. Like, oh, they can keep the volleyball going. Okay, great. We're going to throw 2 balls in there, or whatever. You're going to add to the game. You're going to add to the difficulty while still maintaining the ability to rise and fall and rise and fall. And so when we ourselves can see this patterning and we know, okay, wow, I just got given this huge picture, that it's not a surprise when the crash comes, that we in fact see the crash as essential for the journey of integrating that whole thing that just came in. So this is helpful it's helpful for me right now saying it because I can think for myself of my most recent high. And really, literally, in the summer, I felt like my own self grew to a new level. I was incorporating new potentialities into my life, and I was feeling really like, wow, I can't believe I'm expanding in all these ways. This is so cool, that I kind of like felt the freak out begin. I felt myself kind of like, and I thought, oh no, I'm going into, I don't deserve this, or I'm shying away from it. But in the definition of Kundalini, what really happens is you get the vision, you get energy moving in that direction, you see it, you activate new parts of the brain, dormant areas, and then your body's like, hold on, we got to make this. Like, go lay down for a minute, and just kind of crashes us where it seems like things start to fall apart, right? You're like, oh my gosh, I stopped and now all these things are falling apart. But no, in this terminology, these things are closing down because of the big vision, because of the expansion, life, and your higher self, the God self within, the consciousness in you that knows what needs to be arranged for that vision to be truly implemented, for that energy to truly flow its best. You're like, the pathways we have for this right now, they really aren't going to hold what just happened. So can you just hold on while we recombobulate? And that actually means we got to chop all this stuff down. We got to move you out of this life scenario, or this person out of your life, or this job out of your life, or this mindset, or whatever it is, these clothes, this furniture, like whatever is out of resonance with that expansion. And literally, furniture can be this too. I had an awareness where I was like, I actually have a lot of broken furniture, like broken because it was older, or someone gave it to me and it wasn't brand new, right? But I enjoy to get things secondhand and appreciate their beauty and their uniqueness. But sometimes there's certain energies of broken things or things that have fallen into disrepair that's mirroring some part of our consciousness that's also fallen into disrepair. And that removing that object could actually assist us in getting the download that we're trying to get. So it's also good to not be too attached to what you've got. Okay, let's see. Once the Kundalini storm is kindled, eventually the body runs out of neurotransmitters and the body falls into depression, right? Okay, so then a normal diet would not supply adequate nutrients to overcome the deficiency, let alone a SAD diet, the standard American diet, the pyramid. Thus, relief from depression would occur after enough time had passed after the Kundalini peak, but a more rapid relief from Kundalini created depression could be assured by first making sure one's diet is well supplied with nerve nutrients and taking supplements during the awakening. Now, she references you to 5 formulas for Kundalini. I can say right now, beefing up on superfoods, number 1, omega fatty acids, which really help support the brain and the mylar sheath. Ormus is going to be good, though definitely maybe not if it's your first awakening. Maybe your self-decision there, but it helps support the thoughts you're having. So the more you can be in realization and agreement with this process, the better the Ormus is. But I would also just definitely add in some kind of greens. Marine phytoplankton is really, really awesome. Maca powder is I call it a yogi herb because it's very blessed to the endocrine glands that really are taxed during this process. They feed all of the main endocrine glands. And then nerve foods, some plants that have resonance with our nerves, or you might know have a possible calming effect: lavender, chamomile, skullcap. I'm not prescribing, I'm just recommending based on my knowledge and my experience as one who's gone on this path, and also as a certified nutritional herbologist through the School of Natural Healing. Okay, so With increase in immune activity, higher metabolism, and nerve function during metamorphosis, one can assume that there is a greater free radical production. Okay, this is where your antioxidants are going to come in. This is probably half the reason why we feel fried after an influx. The other major contributor to the down cycle is that the body's resources for making neurotransmitters and hormones becomes exhausted during peak activity. And you can imagine, it's like you understaffed a party that you thought was only going to have a certain number of people, but then a whole bunch more people. Or you understaffed a store that you thought only a certain number of shoppers, but it had way more. And so all the workers that were there, and even the on-call ones that you had as backup, were not quite enough. And so everyone was overtaxed. So then you have like everyone just crashed out afterwards. That's how your body feels, overtaxed. So that leaves a lot of free radicals, right? Like garbage still left that can be damaging to the environment if not taken care of. So that's where antioxidants come in, and they gobble up all those free radicals that come in, rejuvenate all the players, and help with the production of new team members, right? So antioxidants exist in a lot of foods, but especially like your purple and blue rich foods like your blueberries and your blackberries and those good bioflavonoids, grapefruits. The seed especially is a really great antioxidant. Grape seeds too, and you can find these also in extracts. I mean, sometimes just a glass of wine if you are okay with and don't have any pre-existing conditions or tendency addictions with that. I don't want to recommend something that might not be helpful to you, but again, using your own God self to help you know, and if needed, a professional to guide you as well. I do recommend you have a guide, some kind of professional guide. I mean, I work as a Kundalini coach because I've gone through this so many times, and I've gone through it so many times without a coach. And then I started to study in India, right? And I learned all the terminology so that it became clear while it was happening, what was happening. And then I dove a little bit more into what to do about all those things. I did study herbs and superfoods and raw foods and acupressure and all this, any facet that I could, massage therapy, reflexology, aromatherapy, sound therapy, all the kinds of things that would be assisting one's body in managing, right? To me, it's all about our ability to self-manage. I haven't been taking this particular protein drink. This is nice. We're going to see plugs. Have we been doing this the whole time? I'm sorry. What an annoying thing to look at. I was doing a protein drink for a while, and I loved it. And then I wasn't doing it for a while. I just didn't get my hands on it, and I sort of decided to see what it would be like without it. And then I just got some yesterday, and I'm starting to realize that maybe it makes me a little bit mucus, like extra mucus congested in the morning. So now I'm just wondering if it's the best thing, because I'm pretty sure I was avoiding that while it wasn't around, and I was just doing like an Ayurvedic apple dish in the morning with a little bit of cashew yogurt and a little bit of raw honey and some coconut and bee pollen. And by Ayurvedic apples, I mean like cooked in ghee with some raw coconut sprinkles, cardamom, cinnamon, and a little dash of sea salt and some ginger in there, and just cook it all up with raisins and eat it with the yogurt and like in a piece of Ezekiel bread. It makes it all taste kind of like an apple pie with whipped cream. It's really, really good. And I actually think that was working with my body better than this smoothie. So that's good to know, because I just bought a small one and to see how it would do again. So these are things that we become more aware of as we become more awake. We just really feel what our activities and our foods are doing to us. We become more conscious and aware so that we can make adjustments and assist our body in its metamorphosis, right? The The other major contributor to the down cycle is that the body's resources for making neurotransmitters and hormones become exhausted. Plus, all the metabolites that were created in the body, in the firestorm, need time to be converted and disposed of. No, I'm sorry. Plus all the metabolites, okay, that were created in that firestorm need time. Those have to be just converted and disposed of. In our cooked, demineralized bodies, this radical swinging of metamorphic cycles is inevitable. With knowledge of the requirements of the process, however, we can build the kind of integrity and reserves into our body minds that will help to facilitate our evolution. So just the knowledge is power, right? It helps. By avoiding wasting so much time and energy in the down cycles, our spiritual birth will incur less abortion and labor. So, I mean, truly in our spiritual awakenings, we've kind of been killing ourselves, like we have been creating like mini abortions in our consciousness, all of us, because of not understanding how to bring this energy to life. And I think this is mirrored in our scene, our world scene, our process of awakening, and the failures or the trip ups that we're seeming to meet and run into are being mirrored. And this is actually the process that we see it, right? This is the reverse of shadow work, where it's becoming distorted from our fields and we're seeing it in reality. And so we want to reverse it, but we keep trying to affect it by poking at it out here and being like, oh, we need laws against that, instead of turning it around and ceasing that inner abortion of life force energy by learning the process of awakening and being able to go with it. And the labor gets cut down. Like, it's not as hard when you understand. Like, you can just be like, oh, I'm depressed today. Okay, I'm going to go to bed and I'm going to like watch a movie. But then just to not get stuck in that cycle and just be like, oh yeah, this is just comfortable being depressed. I'm just going to stay watching movies and now I'm not going to do anything. Now, again, we've lengthened the labor and we've aborted the process by not just honoring the depression and then getting out, There are many undergoing this process who at times feel quite insane. Yeah, definitely. When they behave well and keep silent, they may avoid being called schizophrenic or being hospitalized or sedated, but nevertheless, their isolation and sense of separation from others may cause them such suffering. We must reach such people, their families, their society, with information to help them recognize their condition as a blessing, not a curse. Certainly, we must no longer subject people who might be in the midst of this rebirth practice to drugs or shock therapies, approaches which are at opposite poles to creative self-development. And that's a quote by Lee Sanella, MD, on the Kundalini Psychosis or Transcendence book, page 60. And I completely agree, and why I wanted to read this, because I also have I had a very good friend of mine years ago commit suicide from what I believe was her misunderstood Kundalini experience that was showing up in her life experiences as maybe dysfunctional relationships that she couldn't handle, and her trying to stay really positive and love and light about it, but not really experiencing that inside, because she was a Kundalini yoga teacher. She was taking a lot of practices. And what I saw was my own failure of helping to educate. And that was a really harsh awakening for me too. And it did start me in this direction of around mental health and Kundalini. Like, we need to know, and we need to support each other in knowing. I think it is imperative to not treat Kundalini depression with antidepressants. Herbs and supplements for depression are generally fine if you know what you are doing. I don't generally recommend pharmaceutical antidepressants, but would like to see more nutritional approach to fixing what is obviously a metabolic problem that is many generations in the making. I suspect that tranquilizers and antidepressants will increase repression and prevent necessary tension and the flow of consciousness energy that transforms the blockages. This makes me sad to read because I'm also aware of people going through this whose families do not understand, and it's so fresh of information, even though it's not. I mean, it's been known in the East, but in the West, it's really like so misunderstood, even so far as many doctors and psychologists and mental health therapists have no idea what a Kundalini awakening is composed of, what that means, what to do, how that's juxtaposed to what might be called a chemical depression. Even though, as you can see, as we're reading, there's so much chemistry involved in awakening, in the biology of spirit, increasing its presence in our body. In fact, our physical bodies are designed to go through this, and all of our chemical processes are designed to take us through this. So if we halt it somewhere and we stop it, just like the idea, you know, it's very similar, this transgender movement where they want to give kids puberty blockers because they somehow don't feel like themselves, okay? Let's mirror that with what we're reading. When you're awakening to more of who you are, no matter what age you're at, and now more and more kids are awakening at younger and younger ages. So they might be tuning into their androgynous nature, because we are all androgynous. At our core, we are masculine and feminine. We have both poles. So if you're younger and you are feeling this, you are being exposed to this awakening energy, you're young, you don't know. Now you have people telling you that means that you're the wrong gender. And now that's being pushed, that parents should support and doctors should support. And no one's being like, hey, what about their biological impulse to move through polarity, right? To fill both of these poles and learn to integrate. Their hormones are doing exactly what they're supposed to be doing. We're in charge of keeping our minds straight. Okay, the hormones aren't wrong. They're a biological impetus. So even this saying like someone has a chemical problem, well, we're interrupting a phase of development. Now, we're not giving the right feedback mentally. We're not saying the right things to them. We're not telling them the right story. If your brain doesn't have a story that aligns with awakening and going up, it's not going to be able to go there. You can't make up something in your mind you've never heard of. You can make up stuff, but it may not be helpful in terms of societal alignment. So this is important. This is so important. So important in mental health, that we have a story that's cohesive, that makes sense, that aligns with the biology, that's recorded through history. I mean, Ayurveda and yoga are designed around a spiritual awakening. That is their whole purpose. Tantra, yoga, Ayurveda, the trifecta of Eastern sciences in India and that region are to support the knowledge that we don't just grow up through puberty once. We have a spiritual maturation that is the furthering of our growing up, right? We've got to have understanding about that to save each other, to save ourselves. Okay, so where am I? The Guru Rawa sensed that the nerves of a woman who'd taken 6 types of tranquilizers and antidepressants to be burned. Think of that. The nerves are burned with the antidepressants. They literally go in and singe the connections so that they aren't happening anymore. If we detoxify, adopt a raw diet, and do those things that open us up to the flow of Kundalini, then we establish a solid sense of deep peace, joy, and equanimity, usually within several years. So important. The diet, I mean, when someone's going through an experience like this, probably diet and nutrition has to be the number one thing. And I would also say, like, sound. So what sounds are being listened to? Is there nature sounds? Those are the best. Or sounds of gentle chimes, and there's sound elixirs and like DNA supporting soundscapes out there that are helpful to bringing the mind. I would even say classical music is helpful because of the way that it activates the full, especially the Baroque areas of the brain. If we detoxify, okay, we establish a solid sense of deep peace, so also meditation. We can reach equanimity. So the sense of coming home to ourself is something that drugs, cooked food, and therapies can never give us. They can't give us a sense of coming home to ourself. Kundalini restructures us to a higher order, enabling us to live a spiritual life in the material world. The die-offs in particular should be regarded with awe and gratitude and as very good news. They don't last long, and we do not transform without them. They can last longer if we resist them, but comparatively speaking, the old must die for the new to be reborn. So the highs and lows of Kundalini cycles should be celebrated equally. This is a really hard thing for our culture to get in on, and that's why we got to have a new state of mind around it. So here's another quote from El Collie, from elcollie.com. That's ELCOLLIE. Prescription psychoactive drugs, antidepressants, and antipsychotics can arrest or completely abort a transformational process. This may sound desirable to those who are having a hard time of it, but these drugs do not return one to normal. Instead, they tend to freeze the process in its present state. Personal story about this: my oldest son's dad had this experience where he was going through a massive Kundalini awakening before I knew him, to the point where he said he was talking with birds and giving away all he had, and he felt so aligned and so one with everything. And of course, he didn't have anyone telling him what might be going on or giving him positive perspective. In fact, his family was all very freaked out, and he ended up checking himself into a mental hospital where they did give him antidepressants, which leveled him out. And to this day, he says he has never been able to reconnect with spirit in the same way. And he's very sad about that decision, that he's tried and tried and tried in all ways that he cannot reconnect. So, such a beautiful man, such a beautiful person, and an admittance to this very passage. And this author continues, worse, antidepressants can trigger psychosis for those in a delicate psychospiritual state. And the neuroleptics, antipsychotics, can cause tardive dyskinesia, a persistent and in many cases irreversible pathological syndrome which resembles kriyas. And that's kind of like making these movements going around. Even so, some people are so prone to severe depression or debilitating psychosis in the heightened states that they cannot function without the temporary aid of these drugs. So this author's saying, however, some people really get out there and they can't even regularly function, especially without anyone knowing what to do or what this is or how to support it. Sometimes a temporary use of these medications can be mild for you. But again, as Guru Rawa said, he was sensing, but it also has been shown the nerves are burned by this. So if you've experienced an antidepressant and you're worried about me saying that, just visualize with me the repair of those, the balm coming back to your nervous system, and using your breath to go in and feel the nourishment like honey at all of the nerve endings and feeling those being healed. Instead of suppression and medications, suggest that the initiate get a daily dose of nature, exercise, water therapy like baths or swimming in the ocean, body work, stretching, breathing, toning, and music, etc. A long list of coping techniques are listed further in Kundalini skills list, that's later in the book. It's imperative that one adopts a diet that does not clog the liver or weigh down the digestive system or challenge the immune system. So you want to be a little bit chill in your diet. The body already has more than enough to metabolize from the alchemy of transmutation itself. So we should be very careful not to overburden it with even more work. And I would say things like alcohol and fried foods and lots of sugars and lots of not good fats. And meat can be very heavy, though I am not going to completely speak against it, because sometimes that can help some blood types ground. She then goes on to say, nutritional supplements should be given to the nervous system to feed neurotransmitter hormones and balance and serve the nerves. Adaptogens like ginseng, ashwagandha, neem, gotu kola, olive leaf, ginkgo, and I'm going to add to that ashwagandha and maca, are probably the most important herbs to take for achieving a higher homeostasis of the nervous system and recovering from depression and numbness. I recommend that both women and men nightly massage their chest areas before sleep to help maintain hormone levels and prevent a slide into depression and numbness. This might even positively affect growth hormone production. So picking a good oil for your body type, coconut oil or almond oil and apricot oil, and doing a chest massage all around the thymus and heart. Rehabilitation of the brain after an awakening takes physical activity and novel environmental stimulation to encourage dendritic branching, neurotropic growth factors, and increase plasticity, i.e. where remaining cells take over from dead cells to improve functional recovery. So nature and like adventure and things like that really do help regrow all of those parts of the brain. Exercise and movement therapy increase brain vascularization, birth of new cells, and synaptogenesis, so getting new brain synapses to establish new connections. So exercise and movement, especially in nature. Note that anticonvulsant drugs can increase functional depression. That if antidepressants are used instead of proactive healthy interventions such as new activities and exercise, post-awakening depression will be radically deepened and extended. So it can make it worse, is what she's saying, to take antidepressants. For establishing new growth in the substantiation phase, we need an appropriately enriched environment. That means people who care. We need people who care around. Activities that we enjoy. Remember, spiritual acceleration necessitates our conscious incarnation. It necessitates it. It makes it necessary that we incarnate consciously, okay? For if the awakening process does not become increasingly conscious, negative outcomes will occur. So there's no backing down. It requires our constant consciousness to continue to grow and thrive. Otherwise, we retard our development, okay? Depression often sets in through internal-external conflict that remains unresolved for an extended period of time. No matter what the original cause of the conflict, it eventually affects our decisions in every parts of our life. Endurance in the face of a stressor eventually leads to depression because no positive action has been taken to change our attitude or circumstance. Saying endurance may not be the thing you need. Consequently, our chemistry then mirrors the adverse conditions through raising norepinephrine and dopamine and lowering serotonin. When low serotonin is maintained over time, we have the biochemical basis of chronic depression. So this is coming from, she's saying, enduring in the face of stress. If you just need to feel something or you need to stop something, or if you're not becoming conscious of what you're doing and you're just pushing through it anyway. You're not slowing down to take responsibility for your actions and your words. That can lead to depression that's chronic. Depression and chronic anxiety are conditions that appear more often in women than men. Research with PET scans show that women have a greater number of the most common serotonin receptors than men, which can also mean you can be happier. They also show women have a lower level of the serotonin transporter, or the monoamine transporter protein that transports serotonin back into the nerve cells and secrete it. So even if we have receptors, we might not have the things to make them work. It is this protein that common antidepressants block. So the antidepressant is going to make it even harder to deliver and connect into those serotonin receptors. Also, it was found that in women with serious premenstrual mental symptoms, their serotonin doesn't respond as flexibly to the hormonal swing of the menstrual cycle as that of symptom-free women. So if you're already having PMS that really takes you into like sad states and you're crying or you're depressed, then it says that can correlate to the serotonin uptake to not be working, right? The flexibility of the hormonal swing. So it doesn't, as you're swinging moods, those receptors are not catching on. It's not catching the hormone. So it doesn't matter what age you live in, there is always going to be some kind of contemporary lion at your door. These days it just wears a different face than it did 20 or 2,000 years ago, she says. The trick is to allow the lion to wake us up rather than make us numb or asleep. As soon as we define one lion, and she's using depression as an example in this section, and deal with that, then there will be another lion. The thing to stay focused on is to help us remain open and not disassociated, to keep on defining and refining what it is we are here for might be the major panacea of all ages. Apparently, it is greater connection and presence that wins the fight against depression. And as stated here by John Horgan, the researchers reported in April of 1998, American Journal of Psychiatry, that intrinsic religiosity was the best predictor of recovery from depression in both treated and untreated. And I would say that's because of their faith. There's no evidence of significant benefits from psychotherapy, drugs, or a combination of therapy. So again, faith and connection, presence is the best healer. Drugs like ecstasy might be good, which is MDMA, might be good once or twice in our youth to give us a sense of expanded perception beyond the facade we live in. So MDMA really blows open the heart chakra and allows you the experience of oneness. So she's saying once or twice in your youth so you can actually touch in with that. Our culture can be so miserable that people use drugs to get out of it rather than into it, which is what we really need to do, is embody more. Therefore, the chances of the drugs contributing to enlightenment are slim these days unless the individual already has a disciplined self of their shamanic soul. Those people that try the drug option would be better off to first use raw food and fasting as a mean to alter their condition, for fasting is a surefire way to tune in and not out. And by fasting, you want to do that carefully. You want to do that with a guide. You don't want to just take everything out. You want to make sure to have proper fats so that you're supporting your brain. So please be careful with fasting too. Fasting, she says, is the most successful way of eliminating pain, though it can be very painful. I might recommend my chocolate fast first, which you can find the book too on Amazon. The Chocolate Fast, Embracing Your Bliss One Truffle at a Time, takes you through a 24-hour chocolate fast. Might be easier than other fasts, okay? Most successful way, fasting, to eliminate pain and disease on all levels and promote greater communion with self and God. And this is the last little bit here today. Fasting itself is still not enough, however, unless the raw food component of the diet is increased. The biology is so agitated that the soul cannot become coherent, and this physical disharmony shows up as mental and emotional suffering. Hence the desire for drugs to get out of it. Drugs by themselves will never ever bring that which is incoherent into the harmonious sympathetic resonance that constitutes the unified, integral, enlightening human being. And that's from The Fasting Path by Stephen Herod Booner. And I'm going to end the reading there, but I will say that the conscious use of homegrown cannabis, sorry, I've got an alert there, can be one thing if used shamanically and with guidance, is like the mother presence. Ganja is a holy plant that has been used for a long time by the sages to align with and see into the other realms, and then to help you, if you are inquiring, to bring that presence into your daily now. So again, only used with consciousness and awareness. It might not be for everybody. I'm not telling you to use it. I'm just saying it can be and has been used for millennia as consciousness medicine. So talk to your professional, get a guide, get a shaman, get a friend that can support you in this journey. I'm available as a spiritual guide. I am a certified minister, so I can stand with you and guide you in your awakening journey if you so need that. So you're welcome to send me an email, stageofbliss@gmail.com. I hope that you like this video. If you do, please like it down below, share it with somebody, and make sure that you are subscribed and check out some of the other videos. And we'll see you next time as we read more of The Biology of Kundalini by Jana Dixon, Exploring the Fire of Life. Love you.